We start the day's other headlines in Southern California, where residents are fleeing a fast-moving wildfire in the hills of Los Angeles. Fire crews are trying to contain the Palisades fire, which has exploded in size to more than 700 acres. Smoke from the blaze can be seen for miles, with traffic jammed up as locals try to flee the area. The National Weather Service is warning of life-threatening, destructive gusts of wind in the coming days that could whip up such wildfires even further. Forecasters say the windstorms could be the worst in a decade.
2025 is not starting the way that we wanted it to, guys, especially for Californians, as fires are now raging through Los Angeles. I mean, we're hearing that cars are being bulldozed out of the way as fleeing residents have no choice than to leave their cars and their homes in panic. Now, I've also got a shocking announcement from President-elect Donald Trump and his plan for the Gulf of Mexico coming up. And also a huge shakeup within Meta and Facebook as Mark Zuckerberg, he's trying to do something that X did first with Elon Musk. But let's go ahead and start off with California here, because this fire spread way too fast due to what is being called a strong devil windstorm. But here's the worst part. We're being told that they don't have enough water to fight this thing properly. What was Gavin Newsome thinking letting this happen? And guys, I just want to thank y'all so much for being with me. Thank you for hitting the like button and subscribing. And don't forget to join us over on X. I'll leave a link for you guys in the description down below to join our X community as well. Let's jump in.
We were here not too long ago, the Franklin fire. A few weeks prior to that, the Mountain fire. November, December, now January. There's no fire season, it's fire year, it's year round. And it's incredibly important that we heed the warnings, the calls, that we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. You may feel at home that you're fine down in Riverside County, San Bernardino County, down in Ventura County, other parts of the state, but there's a reason we pre-positioned hundreds of assets and personnel on Sunday in anticipation of this wind event. 110 engines specifically were sent down, 45 by CAL FIRE, 65 through our mutual aid system, through the Office of Emergency Services, water tenders down here, 7 new helicopters we brought from Northern California down to Southern California. We just brought our C-130 down from Northern California and already just had its first drop. By no stretch of the imagination are we out of the woods. You heard Chief say 10 p.m. tonight till 5 a.m. tomorrow will be peak winds. And having just quite literally an hour or so ago gone up the canyon and saw firsthand the impact of these swirling winds and the embers and the number of structures that are destroyed, not a few, many structures already destroyed, and the fact that people were still not evacuated, still did not heed the warning, we're just coming down the canyon, is a reminder of how serious this moment is and how important it is you listen to these evacuation orders. We've all been to memorials. I've never been to a memorial for a building, but for family members and loved ones. I know you cannot say this enough. It's foundational. One other thing I want to say, because you can't say it enough, is expression of gratitude. The President of the United States happens to be in town. It didn't take more than a text message to get the FMAG approved, which means we're getting reimbursed for the vast majority of these costs. No politics, no hand-wringing, no kissing of the feet. The President of the United States said, yes, what else do you need?
Did anybody else notice that this guy's smirking in the press conference? Do you think he was behind this? There's no way he actually wanted this to happen, right? Now, I don't know why he's smiling, because this is devastating to residents within that area. And by the end there, it was obvious that he was sending a shot to President-elect Trump. But do any of you guys remember the last time that Trump was here and what he said?
Cleaned out and protected. You got to take care of the floors, you know, the floors of the forests, very important. You look at other countries where they do it differently, and it's a whole different story. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem.
So you're telling me that Gavin Newsome, California's governor, was already told to do something about this? But instead of listening to then President Trump, he did nothing. And now we have him smirking while houses are burned to the ground? Was this intentional? These woke leaders really need to get out of this mindset of politics. This isn't the time for political games. Now, it's also alarming that he's saying that this is a year-round issue with no solution. Is this the kind of guy you want leading the state of California, or worse, the United States of America? Because he's saying he might run in 2028. But I want to go ahead and show you guys just how bad this issue actually is. These residents were so unprepared for what was to come that they left their cars blocking the streets.
All of these cars were ditched. So all of the drivers panicked. They took their keys. This is Palisades Drive, as well as Sunset Boulevard. This dozer is just moving these vehicles out of the way. So if this is your car, unfortunately, it's an emergency situation, and this is what they have to do. They are moving the cars as we speak.
This almost reminds me of the tragedy that took place, like 2 years ago in Lahaina, Hawaii, where all of those residents of Hawaii and Lahaina had their homes destroyed. And if I remember correctly, I think it was all the blue homes somehow didn't get touched, or properties that had blue on them. Something weird like that. Oprah and The Rock, they ended up starting to try to raise money to help people. It was a really odd situation. But going back, this is just to prove that they weren't prepared at all for this, guys, which is kind of contrary to what Gavin Newsome is saying. So here's a report where they're claiming that firefighters don't have enough water to fight these fires.
But their hands have been tied, and they can't fight a fire without water and the resources that are needed. Everybody knew these winds were coming. The other question has to be, were all the things in place to try to, again, mitigate the damage here? But the real issue to me is twofold. We've had decades to go remove the brush in these hills that spread so quickly. And the second is, you got to have water. And my understanding is the reservoir was not refilled in time and in a timely manner to keep the hydrants going. So that's a failure, whether on DWP's part or another city agency. But this is basic stuff. This isn't high science here. And it's all about leadership and management that we're seeing a failure of. And all of these residents are paying the ultimate price for that.
That was going to be my next question, is why isn't there water in the fire hydrants? That doesn't make any sense.
You're right. That's a good question. And I think you should start asking, why don't you call the mayor who's out of the country and ask her and get an answer from her?
But based on this report, the people there had zero time to prepare, which raises a lot of questions for their mayor and, of course, Governor Gavin Newsome. Now, speaking of being prepared, a lot of folks don't seem to be ready for another Trump term, especially with him out here saying everything on his mind.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
Trump is coming into this White House and is intentionally staffing his administration with aides who will not block what he wants to do or what he ultimately seeks. I would treat everything he said there quite seriously. I mean, moments after he said he wanted to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that she's going to advocate for that.
And Greene did not waste any time because she's already planning to introduce legislation to back up President Trump. She recently went on Benny Johnson's podcast to say that she was fired up in watching President Donald Trump's press conference, directing her staff to immediately draft legislation. This move is already gaining traction within the Republican Party, with her colleagues saying that they're in. And they're interested in co-sponsoring this bill. So what are your thoughts on this kind of change here, guys? Many don't see it going through the Senate, so Greene may have to include this in another bill that has a little bit more support. Now, on that note, switching gears just a little bit to a shocking report. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, they're now changing their ways. Remember when Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the White House censored a lot of content during the pandemic? And remember how they were saying that this was something that they had to follow? Well, those days are numbered because free speech may be making a comeback to Facebook and Instagram soon. So this is after the fact that X gave it back to us first. Shout out to Elon Musk on that one. But here's Mark Zuckerberg talking about it.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms.
Is this a step in the right direction? Now, if you ask me, anything that promotes the freedom of speech is helpful to this nation. And since we talked about LA just a second ago, I want to redirect you to a previous live stream I did where Hollywood comedians are worried about Trump's second term, with one of them begging fans to buy tickets before they're sent to an internment camp. Make sure you guys check that one out. But as always, appreciate y'all hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you guys on the next one.